How does a calculator add numbers? Well, anytime you're using a calculator or Excel or any automated process, there is some code running in the background. In Excel, if we enter 4, 5, and we want to sum those two digits, we can use the sum function, uh, choose the range that we want to sum, and it gives us 9. So the question is, how does the computer know 4 plus 5 is 9? What I hope to show in this relatively short demonstration using Excel and VBA is how we can write our own code to sum any number of positive integers. In this particular video, I've chosen not to extend this to decimals or negative numbers. You can do that if you want, but I'm trying to keep this video as short and compact as possible. So this is just about summing positive integer values. So how are we going to write, a sum function ourselves? The first thing I want to draw your attention to is these two tables here, this one and this one. And what these two tables are, it's just adding up the numbers of, the digits 0 through 9 and 0 through 9 and giving us the result. So here we have 5. If we highlight this row here, and then 5 plus, if we were to look at column J, 5 plus 4 is 9, 5 plus 5 is 10, and it's the same all the way through. So we're literally just using those cells to store the values for any possible combination of one digit values. And then you'll notice here the result. The result is going to be 0 through 18. So in this second table here, I have 0 through 18 and 0 and 1, and then the contents in here are just summing up those. Now, why are we doing that? If we want to add positive integers, all I'm going to use, or the main idea I'm going to use, is just the simple algorithm that we're all taught in elementary school. Um, so I'll just start with an example. Say 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 8, 7. I'm just making up numbers here. I'll also copy these into here. The reason I'm doing that is this Excel sum here, I'm just using Excel to sum these two numbers, but later on we're going to add more numbers to our algorithms. So what I'm going to do is, and I'll talk about this later, is the algorithm I use is to choose the extra values here and put them into these first and second numbers. So those will change. So if you look at this part here, sum 014 to 015, I've just copied the two original numbers here, and it's summing C7 all the way down for any possible numbers that could be there. In this case, we just have not two digits, but two numbers rather, and their sum is 510. So if we look at the macro that I've written, well, we'll not look at the macro I've written, I'm just running it right now. It will give us the 510. And when I mention the simple algorithm that we all use in elementary school, it's just taking this number 4, 5, 2, 3, and we're just splitting it apart into individual digits in one digit per cell, and like 487 here. If there's the first digit is the first number is 4 digits rather, and the second number is 3 digits. So this here, I'm just going to leave that as a 0. Once we do that, we can just use the addition algorithm that we all learn in school. So 3 plus 7 is 10. So the 1 is the carryover, and the 0 goes here. And then the 2 plus 8 is 10, plus the 1 carryover is 11. So the 1 goes here, and the 1 goes here. And we just iteratively work through that process and we end up with the result. Now we have 5010. What the VBA code does, which I'll show you in a minute, is it will concatenate this result here. And instead of having a 5 in one cell and then next to it a 0 and then a 1 and a 0, it will turn that into 5010 right here. And that's our final result. So now how did I do this? What I'm going to do is initially, we'll see 4 here, 4 and 0 here, and the 1 here. That's at the end of the algorithm, at the end of the VBA code that's been written. But initially, what I've done is taken the 3 and the 7. The, the 3 is put into here, the 7 is put into here, and the carryover digit is put into here. Then I'm going to use a VLOOKUP. So you can look here if you want to take a look at that formula. But what it's doing is it's adding these two numbers by looking them up in this table here. That result will be displayed here. Now remember, I've split these up all into individual digits. So, the most we could get is a 9 and a 9. The least is a 0 and a 0. That's going to cover all the bases for individual digits. And the carryover can only be a 1 or a 0 because it'll max out. The maximum is 18. 18 plus 1 is 19. So the maximum carryover we'll get using this is going to be a 1. So it will be a 0 and a 1. The carryover, like if you look up here, those will always be zeros and ones. So this second VLOOKUP formula is just looking up the values in this table here and summing them. So, here we have 4 plus 1 is 5. And then I'm using these functions here and here, an if statement. Len is just the length of the number of characters. So like 5010 has 4 digits. The length of that is 4. But remember, the maximum here is going to be 2 because we'll have, some value here. These are all either 1 digit or 2 digits. So that's all that does. It splits it into the 0 and the 5. And then once we have it split like that, that's where these numbers get inserted. The digit, of course, it's run through to the end, but initially we'll have the 3 here and the 7 here. The carryover of 0 will be here. And then they'll be split here and here. In that case, it would have been 10. So the digit 1 would have been the 1, and the second digit would have been the 0. And then it'll just iteratively work through that process, move on to the next column, until we get our final result here. And essentially, that's the whole thing. Now, I did mention that this will add any number of digits, not just 2. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. You can read the instructions here. But the way I've designed it is that any additional digits or any additional numbers, rather, we just enter them starting in cell C7 and moving down. Now, so I'm just making up random digits here, just as an example. They can be whatever you like. Okay, so if this is the problem we want to solve, we want to add these 2 digits and all of these digits. What we're going to do is just use what we have already built in order to do this. And how are we going to do that? Well, these first 2 digits, we sum them up. That number will appear here. What we're going to do with the VBA code is take that number. That will then become the first number. So it will be put into this cell here. And whatever is here will become the second number. And then we add those 2 numbers. That goes here. Again, that will then become the first number. And then we move on to the next one and all the way down until we get to a blank cell. So I'm just going to run this right here. Um, so yeah, 846, 853, 846, 853. So yeah, it'll match. Um, that's what we're looking for. So let's just take a look at the code. I don't want to, um, okay, this is the final one. I don't want to take up too much time here explaining the code, but essentially here we have, I'm calling this sub integer addition. So this macro is called integer addition. And this whole code here, that is just um, summing up these two values, the two values that are in these two cells, C2 and C3. So uh, if you want to look at the code, you really don't have to know a lot of programming. I myself, I don't consider myself an expert in VBA at all. In fact, I see myself still more as a beginner because all I'm using here is very simple concepts. Um, like for example, here we're starting A. I'm just calling a variable A. Uh, and setting that equal to, okay, this is the sheets function. What it does is we're calling a sheet, and the name of that sheet is sheet one. In this case, it's actually the only uh, worksheet in the entire workbook, so it's always going to be sheet one. But you may be working with more worksheets, so you need to call the correct sheet. Dot cells 6 5. If you're wondering what that is, that that will look at this value right here. It's row 6 and column 5. So 6 5 is referring to row 6 and column 5. Um, so that's what the sheets function is about. If statements. So in all programming languages, you're going to have to learn about if statements, if then. The syntax will be different depending on the language, but it's just looking at a condition, and if it's true, it will run whatever is written, after that. Like here we have if A is greater than N1, and all these are defined here, A, N1, and 2D. If this is true, then this for loop will run. Uh, in fact, we have multiple for loops here. And then if that has in fact happened, this else if and this else here and here, that will not be run at all because the first condition has already been accepted. So these other ones will just be ignored. Now, if it's not the case that A is greater than N1, it will then move on to else if. And then if this condition is true, N1 is equal to N2, then this code here will run. Now, if neither of those are true, the else will run. So really, there are different segments here, but only one of the segments is going to be run depending on which condition is true. For loops are pretty simple. Um, for example, here we have for u equals 1 to n1. So remember, we've defined n1 up here. And where was I? Yeah, we've defined n1 up here. So for u equals 1 to n1, whatever that value n1 is, uh, that's what the loop will go up to. So it starts at u equals 1. So when we have sheet 1, 2 comma 7 plus u will initially be 1. So we'll be referring here to cell 2 and 8. And then after it runs that, it'll go on to the next u. So u will be assigned to 2, and then to 3, so forth until it reaches the value of n1. So that's how those loops work. Um, and if we look here, I also want to mention this step. So here we have for q equals 7 plus a to 8. Now remember, we've already defined what a is. If a is 10, for example, we'll get 7 plus 10 is 17. But now we have 17 to 8. it's not a problem because the step is -1. So originally Q will be assigned to 17, but then the next time Q will be assigned to 16 and to 15, 14, all the way down to 8 because it's step -1. And then finally, I just want to talk a little bit about this here. So total is assigned to total. Um, cells for EP. EP is just, again, just a variable I'm assigning for EP equals 827 plus A. This is the concatenate symbol. So that's, remember I told you that here we have an 8, a 4, a 6, an 8, a 5, and a 3. That is being concatenated to 846,853. That's that final step uh, right here, and then we're just putting the result into this cell 3, 5 here. So that is basically all you need to know. If you know for loops, you know about this Sheets function, you know just a very little bit about assigning variables. That's all you need to write this code here. Um, Now, this is the code for the clear values macro. That's what I've assigned to this right here. So that just resets everything. So if I press that, it's just clearing the values. So I won't spend too much time looking at the code. It's pretty simple. This is the whole thing right there. Again, it's just basically using the same concepts for loops, Sheets function, and that's basically it. Um, and this last macro here is, I'll just cancel. Okay. Yeah, this is the final calculation. All this is doing is what I talked about here when we put in our additional numbers. So let's just make up some more numbers here. When I put in the additional numbers, okay, so I just put in some additional numbers there. It's this final calculation is what runs the code that will sum this and all of these just by what I explained about before, putting the result. First number goes here, and then this number goes here, and just iteratively working through. So if you look at the code for that final macro, I've called it final calc or final calculation. It's actually pretty simple. The whole thing is right here. I mean, there's a little bit. Yeah, this is basically it. Um, but what it does here is it calls integer addition. So I want to explain that. I actually didn't know about this until recently. If I want to call another macro in VBA, at least modern versions of Excel and VBA, you can just list the name of the macro. So when I'm running this final sub, the first thing it's going to do is run this integer addition macro. What's that? That's the module here, integer addition. So it's actually running all of this stuff here, which I talked about earlier. Um, so even though it looks really, simple and short and you know uh compact, what's the word I'm looking here, um uh even though this is, I guess, pretty elegant code, because it looks pretty short, it's actually running this integer addition macro entirely, all just worked into that. Um, and then okay, I've assigned the variable ru to 7, and okay, here's the do while loop. I was familiar with the while loop in Python, but it's actually new for me when I was creating this project. Uh, I didn't know about the do while loop in VBA, uh, but all programming languages will, I suspect, will likely have a while loop. So this is the do while loop. This is the way it works in VBA. Do while cells RU, remember that's initially assigned to 7. The value is not equivalent to these two exclamation marks. What that is, when you have two not exclamation marks, quotations rather. When you have quotations with nothing inside of them, that just means a blank cell. So remember, I mentioned here in the instructions, don't leave any spaces with additional numbers, and all the numbers must be positive integers. So don't leave spaces with any of these additional numbers. So if I put a 45 here, that will not be included because this do while loop will only run up until it finds an empty cell. So that's what's happening there. And then, as I said, it's just Sheets function to put those values into the C2 and C3 cells that we want to add, called the integer addition, and then RU is assigned to RU plus 1, and it loops through all the values until we get this condition here where, in fact, a cell is blank. And that's it. So yeah, I think that's all I want to show you. Now remember, these two are not going to be um, kept constant. They're going to change when we run the macro. So I'm just putting them here so that we get the equal result in the red cell and the green cell. But yeah, I'll eliminate this because it's not going to be part of the calculation. Maybe I'll add a few more numbers just for the fun of it. Okay, so here are some numbers, and the problem is to take these two numbers, add them together, and add them to all of these. The result should be 11,133, and if we run the macro, yep, there's your 11,133. So yeah, I guess that's all I want to show for this video. I know I was rambling a little bit, but if you stayed through to the end, thank you. And I hope this video was helpful.